And now, ladies and gentlemen, the So Bros Network proudly brings to you some in-depth movie discussion with our resident film critic, Brandon Vick.
Happy evening, everyone. The Vick's Flicks podcast is here.
Welcome back for another episode of the Vick's Flicks podcast right here on Nashville Movie Dispatch. I'll be your host for the show, the EIC at So Bros Network, Big Natural Stoney Keeley. You can follow me on Twitter at Stoney Keeley, collectively at So Bros Network, and be sure to catch all of our work covering the film industry at NashvilleMovieDispatch.substack.com. Joined as usual by the star of the show himself, the man whose namesake it bears. He is a board member of the Music City Film Critics Association. He is a member of the Southeastern Film Critics Association. He's our resident film critic here at Nashville Movie Dispatch, Mr. Big Shot himself, Brandon Vick. Brandon, how are you doing on this fine early to mid-November day?
Top of the morning. You know what? Pretty good.
It's finally cooled off.
Yeah, and October's done with. I feel like I was just talking about like just decorating and how spooky season's finally here, and now it's over.
Yeah, it goes quick. And we've already got the Christmas decorations up in our house. We actually the day after Halloween, we took the Halloween stuff down and put the Christmas stuff up because the season flies. We're going to be out of town a little bit. I'm actually as we're talking, I am driving back from the Smoky Mountains.
Wow.
We're going to be on the road.
Where are you right now? Are you near a Buc-ee's?
Lovely. I was just about to say I'm driving past the Crossville Buc-ee's right now. It's one of those situations where the holidays get so busy. We have so many weekends covered up. We're going to be out of town a few times this month that we're like, man, if we don't do it now, if we don't put these decorations up on November 1st, it's going to be the second week of December. And then we're going to be like, well, there's no point in decorating at all.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what my wife wanted to do too on November 1st. And because again, Halloween was on a Friday. So you had the whole weekend, those first 2 days of November to put everything spooky up and everything that's Christmas. But I love this time of season. I'm going to get a lot of hate mail, but I'm not a huge fan of like Thanksgiving itself, but I like the time.
Oh, man.
I know.
It's my favorite holiday, but it is more so because of, excuse me. It feels like it's right in that sweet spot of like Halloween really gets you going, gets you in the mood.
Oh yeah.
And then you still have Christmas and New Year's to look forward to. So there's still like you're enjoying it, but there's still a little bit of anticipation. Whereas when Christmas and New Year's comes and goes, it's just like depressing. Like the winter blues set in. I immediately just start counting down the days to the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama in February.
Yeah, after New Year's, it is kind of a bummer. February, it's my son's birthday, so that's kind of it. Valentine's Day, we don't really put much into it even before we were parents. So, but yeah. And what is
so?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was actually thinking today, November 10th.
Oh, okay.
But I was thinking, my anniversary, my wedding anniversary just was a few days ago. So don't ask me what we did.
Well,
so,
because it's so spicy.
That's right. That's exactly right. You'd have to subscribe on Cinemax. but yeah,
man,
it is the season.
Man, it is 5 years. 5 years. Since that lovely wedding, and then the four of us went to Gatlinburg, oddly enough, to come full circle that year.
Right. Yeah. I think it's crazy. I met my wife when I was 29 years old.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Man, now you're making me want to do the math with my wife. I met my wife when I was 24 years old.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I don't realize how long, I mean, really, just with the theme of how quick things go, it is crazy to think that I was in my 20s was ending, and now we're talking as our 30s are almost over. So
I know. That's one foot in the
I
grave.
tell you what, we look just like we did in 6th grade.
That ain't that the truth. Not a gray hair on my head.
Nope.
Not a gray hair on my beard.
Nope. Look
Not
at
an
this
ounce of...
kick-ass hairline. So
Oh, buddy, I
nothing's
got you on the
changed.
hairline. I got you on the hairline. I can't leave the house without a hat on anymore. I'm Kenny Chesney. Kenny Chesney now.
I'm Kenny Loggins.
Okay. And and welcome to Jackass.
Well, that's more true.
Kenny Rogers, welcome to Jackass.
No. We at least have 2 people living. I think they're still living.
Yeah. Does it feel weird to be talking about a Franksgiving?
Frankie D.
Does it feel weird to be talking about a Frankenstein movie and this character's place in film history like a week after Halloween?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes, it does. I wish we could have done this in October, but the way that some of our scheduling worked out and the fact that Del Toro's is on Netflix this past Friday on the 7th. So
I don't get the decision there. This Del Toro's Frankenstein, it did get a theatrical run, didn't it? A limited thing in October.
I think it was very limited. I know the Belcourt showed it, but I think it was only through...
It was like 2 days or something like that.
Yeah, I think it just went through Halloween, maybe.
Well,
but supposedly like AMC, Regal, and everyone was getting them, but I'm pretty sure that went down the tubes because I don't think it, or at least around Nashville. I guess it could have been in the bigger markets, I suppose. But yeah, I didn't. Belcourt may have been the only one to show it.
I missed that memo.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you would think like if you're only going to do that kind of run, maybe at the beginning of October and then let it come out like, whatever that weekend before Halloween is, 24th, something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. It doesn't quite make that much sense. And you know what's funny is that, and I haven't watched it yet, but I was talking to Brett about the It prequel series. It's on HBO Max, Welcome to Derry. And I'm like, the first episode was on the 26th of October. So like, I kind of thought they would sort of maybe start it in September and let it run through October.
That makes sense.
Because I don't know if I want to watch that shit in November. I'll be honest.
I don't. I want to watch the non-holiday holiday movies in November.
Right. Like
stuff like Night at the Museum.
Right.
And National Treasure.
Exactly.
And I think Del Toro's Pinocchio kind of feels like one of those.
Oh yeah,
November
that's true.
Kind of flicks.
Yeah.
That's what I'm beyond the horror after Halloween.
Yeah,
November 1st, we're putting up Christmas decorations.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that. Not that I won't see like a couple things, like obviously that's part of the genre, but yeah, I'm not going and really searching for any of that stuff anymore because you gotta. Like I just finished this book called Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay, who did Knock at the Cabin.
How was that?
It's actually The Cabin at the End of the World, but the movie was. And I told my wife that I'm going to finish it in October because I ain't reading this shit in November.
No,
I ain't doing it. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. It's not my favorite of his. This is, I think, the third one. I read The Pallbearers and Cabin at the End of the World. A very easy read though. So, but yeah, I thought I can't read this on November 1st.
No, that's what I was.
I force myself.
I picked up a Grady Hendrix book, and I ended up breezing through that like 2 weeks before Halloween, and then I'm like, well, I can't start a Christmas book yet.
Nope.
Do I have time to work in another Halloween book? And I did.
Oh, good.
But then I read Ray Bradbury's The Halloween Tree, which is a classic.
Okay.
But then it created stress in my life because I'm thinking I got to finish this book in 2 weeks because I'm not going to read it on November 1st. And because of that anxiety, I ended up staying up way too late several nights to finish the book. And then I ended up finishing it in a week. So I still had a week to go before
You should
Halloween.
take a break. I like to take.
You know what I did?
What'd you do?
I grabbed a volume of short stories that are Halloween themed, and I thought I'll just read a couple of these, and we'll call it a day, call it a season.
I like to read a book and take about 8 months off to rest, and then I'll start a new one.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to read Tarantino's nonfiction book for at least 14 months.
Well,
I've wanted to.
Now's your chance,
yeah,
buddy.
I guess so. Hey, speaking of books, I know you've read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, haven't you?
I have. It's one of my favorite books. It is also a book that I would never recommend to anyone to read because it is quite a slog.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be.
Like
it is. You have to remember it was written in 1818, and I don't think it is, Frankenstein's monster throughout the years has become synonymous with horror, and the novel is actually more science fiction than it is horror. There are some moments that are kind of tense, but it's a very dense book. It is written in the language of 1818. So there's a lot of stopping and like, I'm sorry, what does that sentence mean? What are we doing here? What's happening? I think it's one of those books that you don't really appreciate until you've read it through. I've read it now 3 times. And
wow.
By the time you get on to the third read, you're kind of like, okay, I'm making sense of this now. But I think thematically, it's really interesting, this story, how it has translated and held up throughout the years. A lot of the themes, which we'll talk about in this episode, still ring true today. And I think it gives this story a sort of timeless quality. I love the story behind how Frankenstein was written. It was a rainy summer weekend in England somewhere. Mary Shelley, her I don't know if he was her husband at the time, Percy Shelley, who was a famous poet at the time, and Lord Byron, all at a retreat that was rained out, so they couldn't go outside and enjoy the great outdoors in the summertime in England. So Lord Byron came up with this competition that was basically like, which one of us can come up with the most compelling story the weekend that we're here? And what does Mary Shelley do? She just busts out one of literature's classic novels of all time, just like it's nothing. So I've always thought this is a pretty cool book.
And this, I guess, is sort of part of it is, but it's not. But I think about 3 or 4 years ago, Elle Fanning plays Mary Shelley in a movie just called Mary Shelley.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's good in it, and I want to think you explaining that. I'm pretty sure it went something to that effect, but basically, it all is kind of from basically her life and her experiences and what it meant when she was writing it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's as impressive as it is. I just remember that movie not being very enthralling at all.
That's kind of a recurring theme throughout pretty much this character's history on the silver screen.
Yeah, I know. And I just thought it would be more fascinating than it was, which not to say it wasn't, maybe it's just the movie itself, but if it did touch on some of that. And what you were talking about, I sort of remember, again, this has been at least 3 or 4 years ago, but yeah, I just remember thinking, like, I knew it wasn't like going to be like, some horror film or whatever, but it just, it was a bit of a slog watching it. So
I will say that Rooster and I did an episode of Phone It In. It's in the archives on the life of Mary Shelley, and she was pretty cool. She was a pretty cool chick back in the day. I'm sure she would be honored to be referred to as such.
As a cool chick. That's right.
Yeah.
I think she would say thank you.
I digress. The place I before we get too far deeper into this conversation, I've got to ask you, Brandon, do you correct people that call the monster Frankenstein, or are you normal?
I am glad you brought it up because I felt like this needed to be addressed before we do go any further, just because we talk about Frankenstein. I usually do not, unless if it's like my wife or like some, friends or my friends' kids, I like to correct them, just like I like to correct when they say, "Hey, I saw, uh, Bad Boys," and I'm like, "Oh, well, that was out 10 years ago," and they're like, "You know what I mean?" And they meant like the sequel, sort of like that, but no, not usually. And I'll be honest, I'm so used to saying Frankenstein, and if you go and look at basically the original prototype of Frankenstein's monster, they all call him, like, everything in merch just says, I think, Frankenstein. But it's Frankenstein's monster, Frankenstein's creation. In Del Toro's, he's the creature.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, but yeah, no, not usually. And I find myself sometimes just saying Frankenstein, and I've made it a point to say Frankenstein's monster, but it doesn't really feel right when you say that.
It doesn't, and it drives people nuts when you're that pedantic and that petty.
I don't
just constantly bring it up, but I want to honor Mary Shelley's work.
Yeah,
that's all.
And really, if you think about it, and it really kind of gets into like the titles of these movies, like Bride
I
of
was about to say,
Frankenstein, because I'm like, well,
Frankenstein meets the Wolfman.
Right now,
it's not the doctor.
Son of Frankenstein makes sense because it really is the son of Frankenstein. But Bride of Frankenstein, we just kind of glossed with that right over because that's not his bride. I didn't get that from the movie. So yeah,
Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Are they meeting Dr. Frankenstein?
Exactly.
Or are they meeting the monster?
Exactly. And I think we all know it's the monster, but then I just think, is it because of just like, did this all start from like old time marketing where it's not as cool to say Frankenstein's monster, so we're just going to group them together? And I don't think the doctor really gets a credit at all because he's actually Frankenstein.
I think the studios are culpable in this as well because they leaned into. I mean, Frankenstein sounds cool, like that is infinitely more marketable than anything else. But we just got to maybe we should come up with a name for the monster, and he could technically be Frankenstein.
Frankie D.
Frankie D.
Can you imagine? Yeah, can you imagine what? God, that would be awesome marketing.
Yeah, it would. Some of the themes from the story that I mentioned before, there's a lot of abandonment. I think there is a lot that touches on the desire to be loved. I think there is a little bit of like the questioning of God, like humans versus God.
Oh yeah.
Like us having a choice in our creation and the things that we have to deal with, that sort of thing. That's really interesting. I think there's a lot about societal judgment and outcasts and how people are treated without even knowing them, just based on appearances alone, that has really made this story resonate with people. And it's something that the horror and sci-fi genre has done so well throughout the years, is how it uses its style to kind of harness the messages that touch on those themes. But I wanted to kind of ask you what you think it is about this character that resonates with audiences to this day.
Well, you know what? Thank you for asking. And I might be able to answer this in what I found, and this was written a couple weeks ago, but it's an article in IndieWire called How Frankenstein Helped Invent the Modern Studio Horror Movie in 1931.
Ooh.
And it basically talks about how Boris Karloff and James Whale teamed up to create an iconic monster whose influence would be felt in Hollywood for nearly 100 years to come. So with that, and I'm going to get to it because it's actually within this that I also found interesting relating to those themes you were talking about. It says, which this might be a nice segue too, but apparently the first adaptation was a 14-minute version made by the Edison Company in 1910.
Yeah.
It says is quite possibly the world's first horror film. Making these kinds of claims, however, is always dubious given how many silent pictures did not survive the era. Indeed, that was the case for two subsequent Frankenstein adaptations. There was a 1915 feature, Life Without Soul, and an Italian iteration called The Monster of Frankenstein.
Ooh.
Only the Edison Frankenstein still exists in any kind of viewable form, and that's due to a restoration that is actually currently streaming as of a couple weeks ago on the Library of Congress YouTube channel.
Hey, I need to dig that up.
So, but Universal's 1931 Frankenstein shouldn't have necessarily been a game changer. It was rushed into production after Dracula became a hit. The film only gave its creators a handful of months from conception to release in which to make their classic. Yet the stars aligned. Frankenstein was not only a better film than Dracula, wittier, more visually dynamic, more poetic and poignant, as well as scarier, but also an influence on all future Frankenstein movies and a model for much later horror films like Brian De Palma's Carrie and Lucky McKee's May. This is kind of the part where it gets to about the themes, where it says, as in those films, Frankenstein gets a lot of mileage out of creating a central figure who alternates between being the monster, the victim, and the hero, all in the same movie.
Yeah. Wow.
Says Frankenstein's monster, which was iconically played by Boris Karloff, is one of the all-time great horror movie characters, a figure both terrifying and filled with pathos as an innocent dragged into a world that he did not make and that does not want him.
Yeah, it's just such a complicated, deep, interesting character that, has this horrifying demeanor, this horrifying look and quality to him. But like ultimately, I think if you read the story, you end up sympathizing with the creature. And that's one of those beautifully written things that just kind of resonates with people.
And I think it's sort of, and just because of the time and the resources that were available then in the 30s, which it got released in 31. So I'm sure
probably 20s.
Maybe, but you know what? From Dracula to Frankenstein, they only had some months. So it was probably pretty quick.
Dang.
Because of the hit of Dracula. But I just feel like through time and as many other stories and movies that have kind of taken this concept of man playing God, it still resonates not only with that and the advances of science in general that we're living in, but the whole concept of someone looking different than you.
Yeah.
And how you treat them and how you see them compared to yourself. And there is, I mean, the monster is this sort of like, it's sort of the Del Toro's Frankenstein really, I think, kind of nails it, is just the horror and the beauty of humanity.
Yeah.
And sort of how Frankenstein's monster is portrayed, but also how he is treated depending on by who and why he was made to even begin with, and there's kind of that greed. And so, yeah, I mean, my God, those themes, those themes are almost in everything. And I think it just speaks volumes to what message and themes you can get across in the horror genre.
Yeah. And also like something we haven't talked about here, like we're talking about these emotional themes that kind of draw feelings out of the story. But when you're talking about getting people hooked, what is the appeal to this film on the surface? I think it's kind of a scary concept. And this is where like the horror elements drag you in, and then you see the human elements that make it such a rich story. This is kind of a scary concept. I mean, dare I say even taboo to suggest that death is not necessarily the end of life.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned like man playing God.
Yeah.
That concept is fascinating for a reason, because it goes against the natural laws of our existence.
And what kind of life is that? I mean, I know it's kind of heightened in these films, but what I mean, is that even considered life? I don't know, but that's it. That's what it's about, is not only the creation of it, but then once they're there, now what? and walking into a society that, I mean, has it's changed and it hasn't. I mean,
it's a really interesting example of early horror kind of hooking people with the horror elements.
Yeah.
Come get scared. But then when you watch the story, it has those nice human elements that kind of give it a deeper meaning. And I think that's why almost 100 years later, we're still talking about this movie, 1931, and this story from 1818. So I would also say, I do think part of it is just the look of the monster, the way they did him in the movie, which it differs from the story. He doesn't have green skin in the story. He has yellow skin, and he can speak fluently, perfectly fine in the story as well, but not in the early iterations of his presence on the screen. So I do think there is still part of it that, like you said, it's become like a Halloween icon. You see Frankenstein's monster everywhere in October.
Oh yeah. And you have to think, I just wonder what people first thought. Cause the kind of that, what I consider kind of the original Frankenstein trilogy. I mean, all of those are in black and white.
Yeah.
So I just, so as far as like the image of it, which is kind of like the flat top, bolts in the neck. And then of course, I think a lot of it is kind of green with black or purple clothing, I think. But I mean, I don't know about you. I had not seen Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and Son of Frankenstein, which is all Karloff's Frankenstein.
And there's a bunch
monster.
of them too.
But I really was amazed by what they were able to do and get across. Now, obviously, there's not as much depth to some of them because it's more about that monster and sort of the creation and some of it. But I still thought there was some great shots in like the first one where the guy's carrying his daughter. And when Frankenstein actually gets out and, obviously he doesn't know and she's being nice, but then she ends up drowning and it's not on purpose. It wasn't intentional, but of course he is the monster. He killed her. And so, but I didn't realize that for Bride of Frankenstein, that she's only in like the last 5 minutes. I did not know that.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't finished Bride of Frankenstein, so I can't verify this myself, but I think Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein is all technically the book, just broken up into 2 movies.
That's probably right, because the Bride of Frankenstein, it sort of reminded me of Halloween and Halloween 2, because it actually picks up right after they burn down that building.
Yeah.
They find like it literally is like picks up right where it was. And I just watched Halloween 2 not that long ago. But yeah, so that is I kind of like that they did that.
Yeah. And I thought it was a nice little touch at the beginning of Bride of Frankenstein to have actual Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, and Lord Byron in the room, kind of showing how the sausage was made, so to speak. I thought that was a nice little touch to the film too.
And then Son of Frankenstein, which is like it's Victor Frankenstein's son comes back because his father's dead, and then I liked it. I didn't get kind of the same. I didn't kind of get the same feeling of watching the 2, and I guess because this one was a sequel that's also has skipped many years. And it does kind of go back into, I think the main thing for that one was that Igor was in it.
Yeah.
Lugosi, who was Dracula.
Yeah.
He played Igor.
Okay.
In Son of Frankenstein. And that was more of kind of like a revenge thriller type.
Yeah.
But it still dealt with the treatment of people that were different. In this case, it was more so of Igor kind of taking on that role more than Frankenstein, kind of just an instrument for Igor. But it's amazing on just some of the things, no matter how old they are. And, we're talking about now a century. But how, like I said, there's so many things where they kind of establish it here, and it never really has, I mean, from Mary Shelley's text to the 1930s when these Frankenstein movies had come out, there's still things that are intact today, and it certainly shows in Del Toro's version.
So you go on from like Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein. Then you have The Ghost of Frankenstein. You have Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. You have House of Frankenstein. He's in House of Dracula. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. I mean, this is kind of, this feels like the MCU before the MCU existed. You just had this character. I don't know. It's like an IP film in the 1940s.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have known what to call IP films back then.
I also wonder just how much of a cheap cash grab some of these are because of how legendary, like that first Dracula and that first, with those, especially those first three of the Frankenstein movies, that now it's just like, well, that the Frankenstein's in the title.
Yeah.
You know,
so, I mean, but like this is Wikipedia attributes 423 known feature films to
that's crazy.
Some version or interpretation of the character Frankenstein's monster.
Which,
so you think about all those movies and where this thing goes from the Universal Studios, like the classic Universal Monsters movies.
Right.
This thing goes for decades and decades. And I don't know that there's a really, I mean, I'm not going to say that I've even seen, you know, a 20th of these Frankenstein movies.
Yeah.
But it feels like this thing goes for decades and it kind of becomes a bit of a joke. There's a lot of horror comedies mixed in there. And this just goes almost 100 years now before we get to Guillermo del Toro's interpretation of this story, where there's just not a lot of good movies out there for such a good, rich story.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of feel like there's other ones where I started thinking about this. So I feel like Dracula could have Frankenstein monster beat as far as how much has been depicted. Because I mean, there's comedies like Vampire in Brooklyn, but then there's, Bram Stoker's Dracula that Coppola made, and Dracula Untold, and so I kind of feel like I sort of remember more about with Dracula, because there's even some movies like The Invitation, which isn't very it's not the one that what's his name is in, Logan Marshall Green. It's the other one where it's basically a wedding and it ends up being their vampires. Like, there's so many things where like they end up being a vampire, like, and there's even like John Carpenter's Vampires. Frankenstein doesn't get that treatment, but you know what? I started thinking, Invisible Man, besides Elizabeth Moss's one, like I feel like Invisible Man, I guess Wolfman is probably behind Dracula, but Frankenstein, Mummy, I don't think any of them have really been explored in the way that a couple of other kind of universal classic monsters. But when I think of Frankenstein, like you were talking about, I'll be honest, I had no idea that I took it as like Frankenstein and the monster. I didn't think about, like we were talking before we started recording, where like Edward Scissorhands is kind of in that. And I mean,
Rocky
Hotel
Horror
Transylvania, Rocky Horror,
Frankenweenie.
So, but see, to me, those are just kind of, like you said, maybe definitely interpretations, but also kind of just inspirations. But as far as like Frankenstein's monster, I mean, yeah, like it is a joke. Like, I mean, certainly, I think Del Toro, and I'm not saying that he is totally successful in this, and we'll get to that, but is kind of to make him kind of that mysterious, fearful creature that I think people were first kind of really taken aback by.
Yeah.
Way back then. But yeah, I probably could have counted maybe 7 that I've seen that is directly related to Frankenstein or Frankenstein's monster, and that includes the Mary Shelley one, because which I wanted to watch the original trilogy. I thought it was very important for this podcast. They are considered classics, just like Dracula and the Creature from the Black Lagoon, things of that nature. But I think there was one called Victor Frankenstein that had James McAvoy as the doctor and Daniel Radcliffe as Igor.
Yep.
I remember thinking I liked them, but the movie again doesn't really do it justice. And it's not even it's not like, oh, how close is it to the book? Like, we're not even, that's not even being discussed. I hated Frankenstein. I don't know what that even is supposed to be, but I
never saw that one.
With Aaron Eckhart. And then I do think the one thing that makes me think we're like one that actual is funny and is actually good is Young Frankenstein. I think with Gene Wilder, I just feel like that's probably a lot of people's first thought if you say a Frankenstein movie could be that.
Yeah. I mean, I went to a couple of different sources to see like how these were ranked, and Rotten Tomatoes has a list of the best Frankenstein movies, and Young Frankenstein is on it at 95%. But then when you look at the stuff that's in the 90%, it is stuff like Bride of Frankenstein, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, the original Frankenstein from 1931, or I should say 1931's Frankenstein. It is Son of Frankenstein. So it's that original trilogy and stuff that was made like in the 30s and 40s. I mean, they do have stuff like Frankenweenie is on this list. Rocky Horror Picture Show is on this list as well. But like, this is a property that seems relatively unheralded for almost 100 years now. I mean, we can go. So The Guardian had a list too, the 20 best Frankenstein films ranked. And it's like, number 1, The Bride of Frankenstein, The Curse of Frankenstein, Young Frankenstein, Frankenstein. And then you get into stuff.
When was Curse of Frankenstein? I didn't see that one. I don't think
57.
No,
57.
No.
So it was a reboot.
Okay.
But point standing 1957.
Right. Yeah, no. There's no clear. It won't. Yeah. I mean, now Del Toro's, I think I guess the thing is that it's a good time for Del Toro to do this, but the competition isn't really there. And because you're almost going back to at least the 50s and kind of the 30s when these first adaptations were being shown.
The most recent entry on the Guardian's list is 2012's Frankenweenie. And you can debate amongst yourselves whether that's actually a Frankenstein movie or not. So it's kind of surprising, because I think if you asked like the normal casual moviegoer, you would think, oh yeah, this is one of the most popular characters in film history. There's tons of great movies about it. But
yeah, but you would, but it's just crazy that no one has had an actual like good idea until now. But I do think it's also, I do kind of find it intimidating when you try to retell by using these iconic ones. It's fine if you're going to create your own, which is tough anyway. But I feel like I would say, Pennywise, and again, that's sort of even from the Tim Curry one to, I mean, like we talk about with that series now, but there's some where like here recently, I would say Art the Clown, The Grabber, like there are ones that people are really are drawn to. But if you're going to go and you're going to do, that's why I really liked Elizabeth Moss's the one she starred in Invisible Man. I thought that was a nice way. But we've seen where Tom Cruise tries to do the Mummy. That doesn't, the classic Universal Mummy, that doesn't work out. We've seen some Dracula stuff happen that I don't. My wife likes Dracula Untold. I don't think it's very good. I like Luke Evans, but It's really tough to do. I mean, it's just, and even if you try to spin it for whatever kind of generation, I don't know. I mean, it just seems like it's just either cheaply done, or part of it is there's no going back, because as a society, we've seen way too much to be affected.
How do you work in Poor Things into this conversation about?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you're going to include Edward Scissorhands and stuff, then yeah,
fair enough.
And Rocky Horror Picture Show, yeah, I would say that's even more. I would think of that even more than probably the other ones they list of the 450 something.
And I would say that's also probably the best effort we've seen.
Yes, I love that movie. Emma Stone, God bless her.
So I understand that you got to see Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, and do have some thoughts on it that you want to share before we get on out of here this month.
I do, and I actually was lucky enough. Probably 2-3 weeks ago, I got to see it in theaters, and it was. And even though we talked about how it's basically not really playing in theaters, it was well worth seeing in theaters for those who saw it.
Must have been nice.
Yeah, it was. One of the first things that I kind of said walking out was, I think this is the best Frankenstein adaptation. It's not the close. I know from what I've gathered, and I have not read the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but I have read where it's pretty close. It's not exactly, but so I'll be interested in once you see it, Stoney, since you've read the thing 3 times. But I think it's the best Frankenstein adaptation that we've seen. It's not my favorite Del Toro movie, however. I will say that I just don't think I don't think it needs to be 2.5 hours. I just don't think it's needed.
I mean, if he goes like the whole story, the whole book in one movie,
he does not. He doesn't.
Oh,
he doesn't.
Okay.
I don't think this is a spoiler, but we are not getting. You don't get the bride or anything like that. We don't get there.
Okay. All right.
And I'm okay with that. I'm fine, but there is a lot in there that I just feel like just kind of slows it down. Like the opening is great, and then it seems like we really kind of hit a wall until once the creature is there. But let me get to the performances. So Oscar Isaac is great as Victor Frankenstein. I really liked him in this. There is kind of this madness to it, but also this brilliance to this character, and then eventually this anger and fear and regret and everything in it. And Oscar Isaac, he's a great actor, but I think he does a nice job with this character. Christoph Waltz is in it, and I don't really feel like I have seen him in a whole lot of stuff here lately.
Yeah, he kind of disappeared for a little bit there.
But I like what he brings. I will say, before we get to the creature, he's sort of kind of a burst of energy. He plays Harlander.
Okay.
Sort of kind of the mentor guy. He kind of brings Victor Frankenstein in and kind of helps him kind of speed up the process, and he has his own motives as well as why he wants this. But he I really like the character. He's very flashy, but I also again, he kind of brings up the energy when you need it. Maya Goth plays Elizabeth, and I like her. She fits so well into this time period. I feel like she's just meant to. And I mean, a lot of that does go into the costumes and makeup, which I'll get to in a minute, but she's good. But I think the one that takes everything is, and I don't think this is really going to be a huge surprise, is Jacob Elordi, who has been in, he's going to be in the new Wuthering Heights movie that comes out in February. I think a lot of his was from Saltburn as well, with Barry Keoghan. And so but I will tell you, he's unrecognizable, of course, but he is the creature. And again, I feel like this is more of a realistic version. I think Del Toro was sticking with that. He's not doing the whole green skin, everything like that. And I think even before it came out in theaters, they did release, which I kind of hate that they did it, but they released a poster actually kind of showing what he looks like.
I didn't see it. I missed
No,
it.
well, if you don't, then I wouldn't. But
I'm gonna keep it that way.
But his performance brings all these themes we've been talking about on this episode, and it's a transcendent portrayal, but also tragic. It's vulnerable, but there's also it's vulnerable and just this total sense of innocence. I mean, even though he is this big monster creature, he's also almost, I mean, there are so many elements to it where he's a newborn at the same at the same time. So performances, I you can't complain. I do kind of see why all the hype has kind of become behind Jacob, just because one, he's the creature, which is obviously the big selling point of any Frankenstein material. But the way he's able, and I mean just the physicality of it, of as he's slowly starting to kind of become more aware and smarter, and with and how he's able to communicate. It's really it's quite a performance to behold. But the craftsmanship of this that's the star. It's immaculate. It is everything you would want it to be: costume, makeup, production design. I read somewhere, and I don't know where it was, but Del Toro said that he wanted real sets. He's quoted saying, "I don't want digital. I don't want AI or simulation. I want old-fashioned craftsmanship. I want people painting, building, hammering, plastering." And it really pays off. I really, that's the real beauty of the film, and that's what really shines the most if you can see it in a theater. And then the one thing I saw, and I think this also plays into why I say it's the best Frankenstein adaptation, but not my favorite Del Toro movie. And there's a part of an IndieWire review of this that, and I want to quote it because I agree with this, and I think that's part of why, like I said, Frankenstein does play it a little safe in its dedication to the well. It doesn't leave you with the feeling that anything was creatively risked. And then they talk about, other than, of course, the monumental task of putting this all together with the hair and makeup and dealing with the cinematographer, the production designer, all that. Or that Del Toro ever hits his head on some kind of artistic ceiling. If you want your Del Toro weirder, Frankenstein might not be your cup. But if you want a period monster movie that's solid, almost oaken in its sturdiness, you don't need to knock on wood to assure that Del Toro is keeping the innermost essence, the soul of cinema, alive at least. And that's kind of where I almost fall in. There's a lot to appreciate and admire, but there's also this sort of where it's almost where he feels it, the film almost feels restrained and almost standard in a way. So it's and that's weird to say about a Del Toro movie, but I like the comment about, if you want your weirder Del Toro, this isn't it, and not hitting his head on that artistic ceiling. But I will say, just like Eggers for Nosferatu, Del Toro, I think, is the perfect filmmaker to do this story. I gave it a VixFlix rating of 3 out of 5. And yeah, I highly recommend everyone still watching it. And sorry for those that didn't get to see it in theaters.
Do you think it's safe to say, because you talked about it earlier, is like the intimidating nature of taking on a story this popular? Do you think it is probably the safe decision to just not really take any risks that kind of mess with that feeling that audiences already have about the matter? Like just kind of like what we talked about with Eggers and Nosferatu, is like, just put your style to the story because the story has stood the test of time.
Yes.
And maybe you're not getting something that's really outside the box, but you're still getting a classic story told through a new lens.
Yes. I think that is I think that's dead on. And that's why my rating is the way it is. It's because it's almost like you don't really hold any. You can't hold Del Toro at fault because what he does is, again, it's very impressive and stunning in many ways. But there are times where I'm like, well, could we have kind of cut some stuff? Like, how dedicated to the material are you, but still being able to let it be, engaging and entertaining? And I think that's kind of that. You got to find that balance. But yeah, I definitely think that's the case. Which, he said, I think it was on the red carpet or what, but one that he was interested in doing is Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, okay.
And I could see, again, that's also sounds very intriguing, just like Frankenstein did.
Yeah. Well, that is the end point for today's show. Brandon, any parting shots before we get on out of here today?
No, just still, obviously still a fan of Del Toro. Glad that he did it. I wish it would have gotten more of a theater rollout so you can appreciate the things that we were talking about, especially the craftsmanship of it all. But still, well worth a watch. Just wish it was in Halloween, around Halloween time. That's all.
Yeah, I'm with you. Would have been nice. Would have been nice.
And good old Frankie D. Frankie D's making a comeback.
Frankie D's back. Well, thank you guys for joining us for this episode of the Vick's Flicks podcast. We're going to get on out of here today, but be sure to check out all of our work at NashvilleMovieDispatch.substack.com. He's Brandon. I'm Stoney. And until next time, you stay classy, moviegoers.